Hello everyone, welcome back to another YouTube tutorial. Today I am going to be going over two methods of mastering your songs that I use. One being a completely free method using literally just one plugin, and another one that's paid using Ozone. So this will be kind of like a comparison as well. You'll be able to hear what free versus paid would sound like. And to be honest, there's a lot of different ways you can go about mastering. A lot of people will have a lot of different plugins on their master. I kind of do a more minimalistic approach to it. I'll maybe have one or two. One being my clipper or limiter, and then maybe an EQ as well. I don't really do too much to a master, but I will be showing you exactly how I go about that here. So I've put together this track really quickly just to kind of demonstrate this method, and I will also say this track I kind of took an L. I had an idea, I didn't really execute it perfectly, but I do think it's a good track for this mastering video because I did go for kind of a little short intro and then a aggressive kind of verse, not necessarily a drop, but it has a lot of bass in it. And that's something that could eat up a lot of your headroom when you're mastering, so I thought this would be a really great example for how I go about doing it. So really quickly, I'm going to play a small section of this brief intro, and then a couple of bars of what we have here at the loudest point. And this is with my master turned off, just so that way you don't have to hear any of the things I did put on it. It was literally just one plugin, Clipshifter. But here's what that sounds like so far. So this is the bit that I mentioned is incomplete right now. This isn't meant to be a drop per se, but there would be something like a vocal here, and that's why there's a lot of space for a lead element. But either way, it's really loud. There is a very growly, distorty bass underneath it, and that's why I'm using this, because you'll see how that goes into everything and works out. Now, to talk about this mastering process, we do need to talk a tiny bit about mixing and how this is mixed to work into what I'm mastering with. And my basic strategy, I have mentioned this in other videos before, but I take the loudest elements of the track and I try to keep them balanced out right around 0 dB. This is different than, like, say if you try to mix with headroom to like -12 or something. But to show you very briefly what I mean, if we do listen to my verse here, you see, with my mastering chain off, which right now is just this Clipshifter, we're hitting right about 0. If we do add in the bass as well, and again, this is a very distorted, chunky bass, it's gonna eat up a lot of headroom. Same kind of thing. See, it's going maybe 3 or so decibels over 0, but in general, this is kind of where I try to aim. That is without drums or anything playing if we just take all of our layers together. And then, if we go ahead and do the opposite side of that and listen to the drums on their own, those are going to be right around 0 as well. Like, for example, my kick. The kick is right as loud as it could be without clipping, and that's right at 0. So when you put all of those elements together like this, you see it does tend to go a bit over because everything is super loud. Same thing if we add in our bass. It's going way over now. That's just kind of how it is. So this gets into how I master. For example, the free method, which I'm going to go into first, just using this plugin called Clipshifter. I literally open this plugin, I don't change a single setting because it's configured by default to kind of do what I need it to do at these levels. This will shave off those peaks and keep us sitting right flat at 0. So this is really helpful for getting a nice loud master, but again, you kind of need to know what you're aiming for with mixing that loud. You could get very nasty kind of distortion and clipping artifacts if you do it this way, if you're not careful about it and you mix accordingly. It's something you kind of need to start with from the beginning rather than try to apply it to something existing just because of how it works. But now what we're going to do is add in an instance of Ozone 9. This is the, I think it's not the latest version of Ozone, I'm pretty sure there's Ozone 10 now, but I own 9. To achieve a similar kind of sound to what we were getting with Clipshifter, I tend to go on to IRC4 under Modern. I think that's the best sounding mode. But you need to change your character knob from 2 to 0, and then adjust your threshold and ceiling so that they're both sitting right at 0. If you keep your threshold down below, you're actually going to get louder because it's going to make it work even more, really squashing that limiter. But because we've mixed it where the loudest things are already kind of at 0 and above, we don't need to do anything more than what it sits at here, but that's not default, so that's something you are going to need to change. But now, if we compare between Ozone and Clipshifter, then do that here, they are doing the same exact job now, which is really helpful. Now, in terms of free versus paid, what do I think is better? I think when you're working on tracks, just in general, every day, when you're going about just making something, maybe not for release, just in general, just making a beat for the sake of it, you're going to be completely fine with Clipshifter. That said, I do think Ozone 9, under certain circumstances, maybe not with a track like this, but definitely with something more minimal, will get you a much cleaner result, less artifacts when you're pushing it harder into a limiter than you can get with Clipshifter. So I think Ozone is very much worth the money. However, the difference is not that extreme. If you're in a position where you can't really afford Ozone and you just want to go for something free, Clipshifter is absolutely going to get you a great sound. I typically only use Ozone on my final masters that are going out for release, just because it is very CPU intensive and it could very much lag a project otherwise, so I tend to only use it when I'm completely done with the track and just rendering it to release. And for every other purpose, I do use Clipshifter. They're both great plugins. As I say, Clipshifter does have a paid version as well, but I'm just using the free one. And Ozone does also offer, I think, either a free or heavily discounted version called, I want to say Elements, I'm not 100% sure. And the modes are locked a bit. I don't think it has IRC 3 or 4. You might be limited to 1 and 2. They are just different sounding modes. You'll have to use them all to decide which one you think is best. Again, I think 4 is really good. And there are some just general character differences as to how they work. But I think for a modern dance floor mix, such as something like this or other tracks of mine, for my tastes, especially IRC4 is the one I tend to gravitate towards. But in terms of what I will put on a master after that, so again, we have our Clipper or Ozone, depending on what you're using. After this, this plugin is just an oscilloscope that's not actually altering the sound in any way. One other thing I do tend to add is an instance of ProQ3. This is an EQ plugin. You can do this with pretty much anything as long as it has mid-side. I will add a low cut and make that go up to about 150 or so. Obviously, you don't want to keep it like this because that's going to get rid of all of your sub that's on your track. But I'll put it to about here, right-click on it, go to stereo placement, and choose side instead of stereo. What that is doing is it's getting rid of any information in the sides below 150. Because I found in that instance, you don't really want anything in the sides there unless it's an intentional choice. And this will help you to just clean up your track a little bit. Apart from that, any other EQ I will do on individual channels rather than the master. Because if you're EQing on your master, a lot of times that's just a band-aid fix for something you should be fixing in the mix instead. But in the brief little comparison I did here, let me know if you notice a difference or not, or what you tend to use if you go for Clipshifter or Ozone. Let me know in the comments below. That's going to wrap up this video. Subscribe if you enjoyed, and leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one.